Hello, everyone. It's Andrea, and welcome to this edition of Talks in the Car. A couple of days ago, we talked about what we would do for the person or the people in our lives that we say that we care about. How far would we go for the people that we care about? If there's a death, will we travel with them? If someone needed to talk to us at, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, are we available? What would we do for the people that we say that we love, that we say that we care for? Well, today I want to pose to you another question. How far will you go for God? How far will you go to make sure and to acknowledge your love, your commitment to God, that God is your priority, that God is your number one? God really only requires one thing from us. He requires a yes. He requires our obedience. And so in order to show God that he's our priority, that he's our number one, that we love him, that we give him our all we have to do is say yes. All we have to do is be obedient. Years ago, and I can't remember if I told you the story, but we'll say it again. Years ago, I was sitting in a watch night service, a New Year's Eve service. And in that service, the person that was ministering at the time was ministering to the song, Yes, a song by Shekinah Glory. And the words of that song is very simple. Will your heart and soul say yes? If I, God, told you what I really needed from you, would you say yes? And the lyrics continue to go, yes. And it just says yes. And it keeps repeating that yes. Well, during their ministry, there was a dialogue going on between me and God saying to me, Andrea, will you say yes? And in my humanness, I was like, what am I saying yes to, God? And God kept saying, Andrea, will you say yes? And I kept saying, yes to what? And how many of you all know that you cannot win an argument with God? And so this went back and forth for the longest, Andrea, will you say yes? And me saying, God, what am I saying yes to? So finally, after going back and forth in my heart, in my spirit, finally I said, okay, God, yes. And that very night changed my life. So what actually took place was literally probably a couple of days after that, I found out that my mom was very ill and that she was declining. And that went from helping my dad take care of her to, after her passing, me being a caregiver to my dad. So for 10 years, my son and I, we were caregivers to both of my parents consecutively. And now, not to say that had I known what was coming as far as my parents' health was concerned, I would say no, because I absolutely would definitely say yes, and I would do that again. There was more that came with that. It was a carving out moment. I went through a lot of hardships. Being a caregiver, for those who have done that, it's a very taxing on the mind. It's taxing in your spirit. You're watching your loved ones slowly decline. You know what that end result is going to look like. It's taxing on your finances. There was a lot that went into that. And even after my father passed away about 8 years later, after my mom, there was a lot of residue that took place in that. My son and I experienced homelessness just because of financial things. There's a lot that was a part of that. And so I say that to say this, not to say I would have said no to taking care of my parents, but when we say yes to God, we have to understand that there is more that falls under that umbrella. It's not just saying yes to that isolated situation, but it's saying yes to the carving out process. It's saying yes to God molding you and shaping you and putting things in you in order for you to serve in his glory later on. So during those 10 years, while I was caring for my parents, I was also a single mom, and was doing the mom thing kind of pretty much by myself. Financially, I was doing it by myself. I had a young son who was going through, his own maturing process. So he was struggling and going through certain things. And so it was a difficult time period. But then also, in addition to that, God was putting some things in me. A book came forth from that. New ministry came through for me. Having to relearn things, to rethink things. There was a lot that took place. God took me from one aspect of ministry to a different aspect of ministry, being a speaker, doing different things, vocally, musically, doing things, like I said, sharing my testimony, the book, different things God was putting in me. But in order to be effective in ministry, I had to go through that process. So I had to say yes, because even though I would have, like I said yes to taking care of my parents, I may not have wanted to say yes to everything else that went with that. I wouldn't want to have had said yes to being homeless. Who would? I would not have wanted to say yes to the financial situation that I dealt with. I would not have wanted to say yes to the stress and the burden and everything that was put on with me. But had I said no, then where I am today would not have been birthed. The things that God had put in me that was ready to come forth would not have come forth. That book never would have happened. The opportunity to minister to you, even on this platform, never would have came forward. The testimonies that God put in me that allows me now to share the goodness and the grace and the compassion of God never would have come forth had I not said yes. And so in knowing where you are and in knowing what you will do to say yes to God, know that in saying yes, you are showing God that you would go the distance. In saying yes to God, it shows Him how much you love Him, how much you put Him as a priority in your life, how much you will do in order for Him to get the glory out of your life, and for whatever it is that He's birthing in you, whatever it is that He's carving out and chiseling and molding in you to come out, not just for you and not for Him, but so that those that are around you, your family, your co-workers, your friends, your significant other, will know the love of God and will get to know God on a personal level the same way you do. Everything that we go through, our yes is not for us specifically, but it's for others. It's to share. It's to manifest God's love to others so that they will experience the awesomeness of God like you do. So today I ask you the question again: how far will you go for God? Does God get your yes? Does He get your obedience? Because in your yes and in your obedience, that's the proof that you love God. That's the proof that He's a priority in your life. That's the proof that you will do anything because of your love for Him. Be obedient. Give God your yes. Go the distance for God. The same way we will go the distance for others, for our friends, our families, our spouse, our significant others, our children. Go the distance for God. Give Him your yes. Give Him your obedience. And that may mean walking through some hard times, but your yes to God will always allow you to be triumphant in the end. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time on Talks in the Car.